This is the Film Odyssey podcast where me and my brother trek through cinema on a quest to find the best film ever made.
Yeah. Basically. We're starting with the AFI Top 100 because...
Where else to start?
Well, we're American.
It's
if we
true.
Were British, we would start with BFI Top 100.
But yeah.
Be it.
Yeah, so we're counting down. Last week we did Ben-Hur. This week we're doing number 99 on the list, Toy Story. So yeah, we just finished watching this one.
Surprised it's held up since I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. I was expecting to not like it, to be kind of like, it's just a kid's movie, like, yeah.
It's on here
But
because of the technology kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because, it's like the forerunner of CGI, and it was actually really good.
Yeah. This movie won a lot of awards for a reason. So,
how many awards did it win?
Well, it was nominated for 3 Oscars, and it didn't win any, but it won 8 Annie Awards and 2 Golden Globes. One of them for the Best Motion Picture, Comedy or Musical for the Golden Globes.
Oh.
Yeah. Do you want to take a shot at to what the Oscars it was nominated for?
Special effects?
No.
How? The entire movie is special effects.
Yeah, I know. But, Randy, it was... Here's the thing. So, it was nominated for its music, obviously, because
sure, makes sense.
Best Original Song.
Yeah.
And the other one was Best Original Screenplay, and it's the first animated film ever nominated for Best Original Screenplay.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Now that you say it out loud?
Sure.
Now, granted, it didn't win any of those because Nick Cage showed up and won his Oscar for Leaving Las Vegas. It was the year of the upset.
Okay.
But yeah, Toy Story. I mean, it is kind of fascinating because the production behind this movie is an absolute production hellscape.
Was it?
Oh, yeah. So, the big...
Well, it was a forerunner of CGI.
Yeah, it's the first completely computer-animated feature film.
Yeah.
Which is a big reason why it's probably on the AFI Top 100 because of its technological place in history.
Yes.
But for the production. Because this wallowed in production hell forever. It was greenlit in 91, and it came out 4 years later. And in the intervening time, the production shut down for 3 months. The animation staff went from 24 people to 110 people. The budget went from 17 million to over 30 million. And this is coming from an original idea John Lasseter had back in the 80s.
Okay.
Like 85. So it's a 10-year span from inception to being released. But then it gets released, now holds its place in film history, first computer-generated film
and
ever.
I'm sure it made its money back.
Oh, made a shit ton of money. Made all the money. Are you kidding me? Cost like $30 million to make, and it grossed $373 million.
Good graciousness.
Yeah, if you're wondering, at the time this was released, the biggest films of that year were Die Hard with a Vengeance, followed by Toy Story and Apollo 13. Yeah, and this is also the year where we got Braveheart, Pocahontas, Usual Suspects, GoldenEye.
Usual Suspects?
Yeah, dude, and GoldenEye. It also gave us a great video game this year. 95 was a solid year.
The film and the game GoldenEye?
Yes!
Oh, goodness.
It's good stuff. But yeah, where do you want to get started with this one?
Well, that it actually holds up. It's like, I chuckled at a good amount of the jokes in the movie. And I thought it'd be a little off-put by the, by our standards, ancient CG animation.
Yeah, this came out in 95, so that's 26 years ago.
Yeah, but it looks fine because I think it's the consistency of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole setup for the movie of them being like toys and whatnot.
Everything's supposed to look kind of plastic and
It works. Everything it works. Like, I thought I'd be really thrown off by it. Like, at one point in the movie I noticed that like Woody like turns away from Buzz and like you see his ear and it's like this really like low res
polygon
texture thing that's his ear, and then I was like, well, he's a toy.
It's supposed to look kind of crummy.
Yeah, it's supposed to look crummy. He's a toy.
Yeah, and also I will say that there was a genius move made in the filming of this where they don't show people's faces as much as possible. They try and show as little human face as much as possible because, I ain't gonna lie, at the beginning of the film, when I see Andy's like little sister, that is the uncanny valley I do not want to live in. That
really?
It's so creepy. I don't know why. Because I've talked about this movie on the other podcasts I do, and that's the same thing that I come to every time, is the toys, the story, everything about this is great, except when I see the human people, and then they're just creepy.
And then they look just weird.
They look just weird.
I mean,
It's just weird.
Look kind of weird, but I kind of see it as like the movie from the toys perspective, in which the people probably look pretty weird.
Yeah.
You know, because they're not toys.
They're these autonomous god beings that control them.
And basically, I kind of give it a pass. That the people don't look like all that great because they're not the focus of the story.
Yeah.
Well, although I guess you could argue that Andy is the focus of the story because he's the focus of the toys' lives.
Which is kind of a cool thing, right? This movie actually has weird underpinnings of jealousy, desire, purpose in life, all that stuff going on.
It's a full-fledged story.
Yeah, which I mean is a kind of a high bar considering the kids films coming out in the 90s, or the kids films that preceded this, especially out of Disney.
Yeah.
Which weren't exactly deep movies. They were more just fun, but they were safe movies.
Yeah. They're kids movies, kids movies in a very traditional sense.
Yeah.
Where, nobody's going to get upset. It's just a nice little story to put on for the kids. But Toy Story, it's got a little something for everybody,
It has those weird adult jokes that go over everyone's head until they're in their 20s.
Oh yeah, when Mr. Potato Head takes off his lips and starts kissing his own ass.
Yes.
When they're talking about Woody. Oh goodness.
It's good. Okay, I got a question for you, Randy, about the story, as it were. Because this is a kids film traditionally, right? But it does deal with more adultish themes, purpose, belonging, existential dread of am I a toy for this giant unknowable child being.
Well, also it kind of shows the kids shows and movies of the time where they had more underlying adult themes. This is where ideas for South Park and The Simpsons all kind of sit in the same area in which they seem like they're for kids, but they leave more. I mean, South Park is it's supposed to look like it's for kids and not be.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea of it.
That's the whole point. It's supposed to be this very raunchy adult TV show that looks like it's made for children.
Yeah. And, The Simpsons is something you can put on for your kids, but it has all these adult jokes in it.
The first 9 seasons of The Simpsons have some of the best writing for television ever.
Yeah.
Because you can go back and watch a lot of early Simpsons and you get all the jokes that went over your head when you were little, and they just play off so well. This is kind of in the same vein.
Yeah, but this is more kid focused than those are, especially South Park. But even more so than The Simpsons, which I would say is a pretty safe kids show.
Yeah.
But it's this is really a kids movie that somehow finds a way to make these more adult jokes. When he calls Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize that before. It is what? He actually says that in the movie? That's pretty funny.
Yeah. What is it? I think there's another thing where it's Bo Peep is obviously hitting on Woody, and she's like, hey, you can always, come over and see me, Sheriff. And I'm
of course.
She is blatantly asking Woody to drop the wood here.
Oh, okay. To lay pipe.
To lay some pipe here.
Goodness.
Again.
Also, when Buzz shows up and she's instantly ooh, I know who's my
moving buddy.
Who's my moving buddy?
And
I'm just oh, Poop, come on now.
Right? It's kind of funny because they're okay. What was a theme or a messaging or something that was a little bit more interesting than you thought was going to be in this movie? Because the movie's objective is be for kids. All the fun trappings of a kids movies theme and messaging, but there's other stuff here. What did you see anything in particular?
Well, it's the purpose of the toys, and Buzz kind of realizes what his purpose is his purpose is to be a toy for Andy.
Yeah.
How all the toys in the movie kind of realize their purpose is to be there for Andy.
Yeah.
It's such a selfless thing. It's kind of strange, when you think about it in the movie. How it's almost kind of I don't know, I don't want to get too off the deep end here, but it's almost religious, they're in this whole thing together for Andy.
I mean, we worship the claw. He chooses us to
that
leave.
Was great too. It's that one was a cult,
Yeah. That is kind of an interesting thing, because I did notice that too, because again, I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft, and the existential dread of being is blows my mind. But Buzz is going through an existential crisis of being, trying to find purpose, because he thinks he's one thing.
He thinks he's a space. He thinks he's the Space Ranger.
Yeah.
He is Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah. And then he gets in his not only his purpose, but his entire sense of reality destroyed over the course of a day. And then he's finding this new purpose. That's a Lovecraft story where I find out that I'm not who I am. I'm a mechanical being that's the plaything for the dark god Cthulhu.
Except it's not a dark god, it's Andy. It's just some kid.
That's the thing. You're not even good enough to be a plaything of Cthulhu.
Goodness.
I'm memeing. But it is a fascinating thought, right? Because this movie's dealing with a philosophical concept of finding your purpose in the world.
And it does it in only like 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a great 80 minutes.
It was a fun 80 minutes. I know last episode we were saying it's like, man, Ben-Hur 3.5 hours. I could use an extra 20 on this. Oh, that was so good.
This movie is nice, succinct. Everything's great. You know, I wouldn't add anything, wouldn't take away anything. It's good as it is. And I like the fact that it's only 80 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a featurette right after the movie, and one of the people on there said, from frame 1 to the end, everything works. Everything has a purpose. You couldn't take a frame out and put a frame in that would tell this story any better. And
Which is what we said about Ben-Hur.
Yeah, I kind of believe him, too. It's just a fascinating kind of movie.
It's great.
It is great. Dude, it's so good.
Oh, goodness.
We'll save that one for when we get to the Bible epics, but
it's so good.
It's so good. So I got another question here, because the movie isn't just about the story, it's about the performances. And we have Tom Hanks and Tim Allen, who play, Woody, Buzz, and it's kind of interesting because at the time Tim Allen was the bigger star than Tom Hanks. Well, he had the #1 show on TV with Home Improvement. I think he had the #1 book.
Was that really the #1 show at the time? Was Home Improvement?
I believe so. One of them. It was like either the #1 or the top 5 sitcom.
Top 5, yeah.
Yeah, huge at the time. He had the #1 memoir on the New York Times bestseller, and this, I think, made him a trifecta where he had the #1 film in America. He was a huge star. And Tom Hanks, he hadn't done Saving Private Ryan yet. I don't think he had done Castaway yet. He was about to become this huge star, but this is right before that. Right before he starts like winning Oscars down like back to back here, and it's great.
They actually give a great performance,
which is fascinating because they're just their voices.
Yeah,
and this is rare occasion.
It's their voices paired with the animation, and the animation really helps them play it up. Like, it really comes off well.
Yeah, and I know people have said this about these characters and these performances before, where they are iconic. You couldn't replace them with anyone. And I've always wondered, why is that? Because there's great voice actors in this film alone, and there's great voice actors at the time that could step in and do things, but I wonder, is there something unique about these guys that no other actor could have done with this performance?
Well, Tom Hanks has kind of like a nice earnest voice, where he comes off pretty genuine a lot of the time.
He's the modern day Jimmy Stewart.
Sure.
He's just the modern day nice guy. And
yeah.
And that voice also has that, I don't really know, it's just a very comforting quality to it.
He sounds like a nice guy. Like, he's got a nice voice, and somehow fits that like cowboy aesthetic too of Woody, without going like too far into like, old John Wayne.
Oh, could you imagine Tom Hanks putting on a John Wayne voice in this movie?
But it sounds like the toy voice, when they like pull the string and it kind of like plays up the more like toy-y sound, where they probably like run it through a couple filters or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, it sounds believable. It sounds really real, like that could be the voice they use on these toys. And like the same thing with Buzz Lightyear when they have like the commercial, which is like such a nice 90s. Dated commercial.
Oh, that commercial.
It was so good. Like, it played up the datedness of that commercial so much that it went from being like, oh, like, gosh, it's like another 90s commercial, to being like, yeah, that's a 90s commercial.
That's a real 90s commercial.
That's a real... I was surprised there wasn't any extreme with just the X,
Dude, I thought, okay, my mental canon is that Tony Hawk comes in at the end and grabs Buzz Lightyear, alright? That's the head canon now.
But like, when they do that commercial, it becomes totally believable that this is the voice of like a toy, of like somebody who voice acts the toy on a TV show, like to sell toys.
Yeah. And it's also a thing where it's like, okay, this is another weird thing, because you notice how they're, cowboy and a spaceman?
Yeah.
And this is a really weird, I'm going to read way too much into this real quick, hold my beer. So, you know how in the film we never see Andy's dad?
Yeah.
And
assuming he's just not there.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But Andy is finding this strong emotional attachment to these very traditional father figures.
Yeah.
The cowboy
and the
astronauts. I mean, think about it. From the 1930s up until the 50s was like the prototypical male father figure in media was the cowboy, the Western. Yeah. And then once you hit the 60s, 70s, 80s, when we became space obsessed, it became the astronaut, the spaceman. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that informed Tom Hanks, Tim Allen's performance, where it's like, yo, Tom, you're not just playing a cowboy doll, you're playing the archetypical cowboy.
I mean, Tom Hanks does have like a fatherly voice.
He does.
But I can really see that though, or see that as well, because they do mention how Woody has been his favorite toy since around like kindergarten, is what they say in the movie, and like, you know, maybe his dad left around kindergarten, you know.
I mean,
picked up Woody as like this father figure.
I think in the movie it's even implied that, because we're at Andy's 6th birthday party and his sister's like 1. So 1 year before that would have been the last logical time the dad would have been in the picture to have the kid. So that actually kind of lines up.
You know what's kind of funny though is that Andy seems like this nice, well-adjusted kid and he doesn't have a father figure around, but Sid does, and he's not a well-adjusted kid.
Yeah, and it guess it's also the thing where we see Sid's father or father figure is kind of like asleep, you know, in front of the TV.
Yeah.
But the father figures that we see in this movie, of Buzz and Woody, their whole purpose is to be there for Andy, like provide for him. I wonder if this movie is taking place in Andy's imagination, where he's imagining the father figure who left him, and these father figures, their whole purpose is to be there for him. Which makes this movie go from like, oh, that's a really nice kids film, to like, oh my god, this movie is way deeper than it has any credit to be.
Well, I think like because they don't really address a lot of these things, and the movie's real, like, you know,
real light.
The movie's real light. It's about like the toys and their adventure and the wacky antics they get into and all that stuff at like baseline, you know.
Yeah.
But then there's all this other stuff you can think about.
All the subtext
you can think about. The movie is really fully fleshed out. You know, it gives a great experience during the movie and after. You can think about all these different things. You know, you can think about like what, you know, religious context it might have. The whole, like, their whole purpose is for Andy, or, you know, their whole purpose is for Andy in like a fatherly way. You know, because he doesn't have one himself. And what you can like glean from like Sid's room and Sid's like house, you know, and like the differences between like Sid and Andy, and the differences between like the toys and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, and Sid is also like just, I feel kind of bad for Sid at the end. I know he's like the villain of the piece, but at the end where Woody talks to him and they have the whole like toys coming to life thing, Sid's scarred forever, right?
Oh yeah, he's done.
He's so done.
He's goner.
He's absolutely gone. Woody has like annihilated Sid's entire ability to like adjust normally.
His psyche, yeah. Well, I don't know. It might snap him out of his whole, you know,
I'm gonna burn things.
Yeah, toys and whatnot. But he's definitely gonna have some problems later in life with like the whole adjusting to like, you know, he's gonna have to go through that whole existential crisis of what I saw. Was it real, or was it just like, you know, my way of like coming to terms with like not doing this anymore? You know what? Like, he's gonna have this whole thing, or maybe he'll repress it.
I'm really mad that in Toy Story 3, when we see Sid again, he's just the pizza boy, and it's not like he's in therapy. He's like, oh, whacked out now. No. Toy Story.
I've never seen Toy Story 3.
I mean, I saw it once, and it was many years ago. I think when it came out, but in it, it's just like a flashing thing where it's like, oh, Sid's now the pizza port delivery boy.
Okay.
I wanted a version where Sid goes to, you know, the asylum from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, goodness. But that would be too
far. Oh, it'd be way too far. Again, my headcanon is twisted. But, I don't know. It is an interesting thought, though, and an implication of the story that's just kind of funny.
Yeah, but, you know, how the story plays out, though, is it's just like Sid's the villain, you know, and it's like you're not really supposed to think that much farther into it, but it's there for the more adult audience.
Yeah.
You know, as a kid, Sid's just kind of like this evil kid. He's the villain. He's the bully, you know, and then the toys get their revenge on him, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. And Yeah, it is one of those things where it's probably that isn't supposed to be thought of that deeply. It's just supposed to be a thing.
I'm sure it's there for you to like digest,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not really the main purpose. You know, the main purpose of the movie is that it's a nice kids movie with some
deeper theme.
Some deeper themes that are like more obvious and more fleshed out than others. You know, like the purpose of the dolls. Or the action figures.
Yeah.
Sorry, action figures.
Action figures. All right. All right. It's fine. But speaking of purpose, because this film had another purpose outside of the film itself.
Uh-huh.
And that's the fact that it's the first completely computer animated film. Its purpose was meant to show that you could do something cinematic with this technology. Pixar more or less existed for like 10 years being a tech company trying to make computer animation work. And the only way they thought they could do that was telling a story with it, like making a movie and showing, hey, this is what computers can do in the realm of like art. And there is a core element here that makes the film feel kind of timeless, like we said before, how once we were watching it, once we were looking at the toys, Buzz, Woody, we didn't really notice that it was really computer animated. We just kind of got into the story and the characters. But do you think the technology makes the film show its age a little too much, or do you believe the rest of the film makes up for whatever technical shortcomings it may have 25 years later?
I think they made a really good move when they made this movie to make it so timeless, is that they kept everything consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that like when they started like getting into the nitty gritty and like actually animating the movie and actually putting it into production, you know, past the point of just like, you know, spitballing ideas.
Yeah.
When it was actually being made, that when new technologies came out, they didn't instantly move on to that. They were like, no, we've got to keep everything consistent. It's like
they didn't do the Duke Nukem Forever strategy of development.
Yes, they didn't do the Duke Nukem Forever strategy of development, where whenever the new thing came out, they were like, no, we've got to move on to that. And then the whole thing looks so inconsistent and like from different eras. But it made probably the like very important decision to have everything look the same, have everything be very smooth and very put together and of the same era. And so since the consistency of the movie is very high, I think it's timeless, because
it's so much easier to just invest in what you're watching when everything is so smooth.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of any computer animated films, maybe not of this company, but like a little bit later, that are incredibly dated, just based purely on how they look, like the technology.
Like that Green Lantern movie.
Oh,
that's a perfect example.
Oh, you're right. The Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film?
Yes.
Yeah, that CGI technology is varying throughout the film. Some's really good, some's really bad.
Yeah. Also, some stuff like was it Man of Steel where they had the CGI off his mustache?
Oh, that was in the Justice League.
In Justice League?
Yeah. That is one of those things where...
kind of a rush job.
A little bit. I mean, that's another thing. Those are just little moments in movies. This is a whole movie like that.
True. But usually when you do something where it's the entire movie is computer animated, you try
know
and
when
make
you
it
mess.
consistent.
You also know when you mess up, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about that, but you at least... at the forefront, you're like, you know, we're got to make it look consistent. You know, we can't change our animating style halfway through the movie. It's just not happening.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's a thing. I feel like you're coming at it from the viewpoint of somebody who's looking at this kind of development through like a video game kind of perspective, because I can't imagine, I don't think there's many films that halfway through production they change whole things, but in video games that happens a lot of times. You're halfway through making the game and they're like, yo, new engine came out and we gotta redo the whole thing.
Also, like at an animation studio, I'm sure like when a new technique or new technology comes out, that they want to try it, you know, and you know, maybe somebody gets a little ahead of themselves and is like, let's try it on this production.
Yeah. That was a thing that did happen. That happened post Toy Story. There were a few films in development at, I believe, DreamWorks when it was starting to become a thing, but that was after, I guess, Pixar was bought by Disney in like the 2000s. But there were a few films that were originally going to be 2D animated, and then new technology came out, and they're like, well,
let's see the success of Toy Story,
and they switch over, and they're like, all right, we'll make it a 3D animated because that's big business. And when we watched the featurette, when there was all the interviews from Brad Bird, Miyazaki, Lasseter, Peter Jackson of all people, which was weird, they were like, yeah, a lot of films thought people were going to the theater to see the technology, but they didn't make a good movie around it.
Yeah, this movie, Toy Story, was such a success because of the story, because of the film itself, not so much the animation. Mm-hmm. The animation is just part of the movie, but the movie itself as a whole, the animation included, but mostly the story, the way it's told, the voice, the acting, mm-hmm. is what made the movie so good.
I feel this is a thing where
I don't happened to be 3D animated.
Yeah, I feel that's a thing, because I don't know if I said this on other podcasts or anywhere else, but at the end of the day, the only thing you need to make a good movie is good story and good performances. Everything else is filler.
Yeah.
Which, in this, that's really what they had. A good story, good performances, everything else was filler. But that does lead me to another question about its reception.
Well, actually, one more thing is... Mm-hmm. I just had this idea because, I mean, like, the title, like,
Toy Story.
Screen... No, the title screen is, like, running in the background.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So this whole movie was, like, CG animated, right? Mm-hmm. But they didn't really give much or any thought to the lighting in this movie.
I did notice that there's one scene where the lighting is actually, like, really dynamic, and it's the scene where Buzz and
is
Woody...
like, depressed, right?
Well, not even that. I was thinking when it's, like, that golden hour effect when Woody's about to push Buzz out the window.
Ah.
And you're seeing when they're giving Woody the fifth degree, it has that harsh, like, blinds lighting in the back. It starts to look kind of like a noir.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, Woody's all, like, scared and everything like that, and it's a very intense moment, and the lighting complements that. But I do know what you mean, because a lot of it's very just
bright,
open lighting. It's that I feel is a limitation of the technology, because as we know,
so we've found something.
Yeah, because as we know, not until 2004 when the holy entity that inhabits John Carmack discovered shading in Doom 3.
Oh goodness!
There wasn't shadows in like in computers that were
there's shadows.
Quality.
Just you couldn't have like really dark scenes and have them come off very good.
Yeah. And I do know that the lighting that is prevalent is moody. It does do a tone for the scenes, but I do notice there's not a lot of dynamic shadows going on, or a lot of dynamic lighting going on.
Yes.
Which, is that the only flaw with the tech here?
I think so. I think that's just about it. Is that the lighting itself isn't very realistic.
Yeah, I mean...
But I mean, it is a movie about living toys.
Which, realism.
And it's completely computer animated.
You know. It is kind of a fascinating thing when we're sitting here, we're just finished watching the movie, want to critique it a little bit, find
something I don't like about it.
Yeah, I mean, even in Ben-Hur, which you loved, we found some things we didn't really like, that didn't play too well, or it's fine. Yeah. In this, it's like the lighting that
that's really the only thing I can think of,
Everything else is actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that the reception of this film. There's the next question I want to pose at you, because the film has 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 95 on Metacritic. Roger Ebert praised this film, gave it 2 thumbs up, whatever that's worth. And this film also holds a special place in the hearts of children around the world. But do you think it holds up and the praise would be the same if it was released today instead of 95? Or do you think its place in history kind of colored its reception and its criticism of it? It being the first computer animated film, it being released at a time where it was before a lot of technology kind of caught up and people were starting to tell more adult-ish stories with more, deeper themes in animated films? Or do you think that this film being the first makes it great?
I think that if this movie was released today, it would not get the same reception because frankly, it would look like shit if it was released today.
Being frank.
I mean, that whole thing where they went from 24 animators to 110, this would look like they had like 10 animators.
Yeah, this looks like some guy did it with his buddies in a garage.
Yes, like this looks like people just like spitballed some ideas online and people that like never met face to face made this movie.
I mean, granted, when we're getting to the point where we can CGI in Peter Cushing into Star Wars and it almost be believable, almost big asterisk, it's still way better than what Toy Story looks like now.
But the thing is that that's all hypothetical, like if it was released today. But the fact is that it wasn't released today. It was released in 1995. And does that color people's opinions on it? Of course. But the thing is that it was an amazing movie for the time. It's still an amazing movie today. But we don't have that same kind of like knee-jerk reaction as if it was released today.
It's true. But and
the thing is, if it was released today, it wouldn't hold up even like, 20 seconds after it came out. It would already not be holding up because it's not of the quality that you expect of a movie of today to come out that has this like computer generated animation. But since it came out in 95 when this was cutting edge and it looks good for its time, it's going to last forever.
Yeah. And it's also the thing where the story and the performances, again going back to it, almost holds up anything that's wrong with it in terms of like it's aging poorly kind of thing, right?
Well, I think because it came out in 95, it's not going to age poorly. It's kind of a weird thing to think about that if it came out today, it would age very poorly because it already looks aged. But because it came out in 95, I think it's going to age fantastically because people know what they're like going to expect. They're like, oh, this is the first big computer generated animation movie. They're like, they know what to expect with that.
I mean, it's also a thing where I feel like as things go on, we're getting another generation of kids who've gonna see Toy Story for the first time. And I feel like even with the saturation of like, Marvel movies, newer, cleaner, fancier kids movies, Pixar movies, things like that.
Yeah, Incredibles cars,
so on and so forth. I still think Toy Story stands kind of head and shoulders above them in terms of what it's doing. I think the iconography of Toy Story at this point in the game is insane.
I mean, I think also the story of Toy Story, which kind of sounds awful to say, but I don't know how else to say it. The story of Toy Story also holds up much better than the story of Cars or The Incredibles or all those other like
the other Pixar movies,
animated movies. Yeah. It holds up a lot better than they do. And the that timeless story and the iconography, like you said, of this being such a huge cornerstone will help it hold up a lot better than these other movies.
And I would have to agree with you. It's also a thing where the story is so simple. Toys are alive, they get lost, they try and find their human again.
Yes.
And that's like just a really simple, easy to follow story, and easy story to grasp for like a young kid trying to like when you're showing this to somebody.
And also, it's 80 minutes.
It's also 80 minutes. It being 80 minutes really bumps this movie up in terms of like easy to watch, fun, bite-sized film.
I mean, by the time we finish this podcast, we're going to be recording for like half the length of this movie.
I mean, at least. But I mean, let's try and beat the timer as we get into the AFI comparisons here.
Oh.
Right, well, because this is on the AFI Top 100. It wasn't on the 98 list. It was on the 2007 list, so it was a brand new...
it was probably too soon for the 98 list.
Way too soon, because I think to qualify, you had to have been out for a certain number of time, and...
A certain number of years.
In 2007, they said anything released before 2000 or after 2001 didn't qualify, so you had to be around for about 5 years. So, it comes out in 99, or it comes out at number 99... And it's just over Ben-Hur, which I talked about last week. Really enjoyed it. One of your favorite movies of all time now.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, do you think Toy Story deserves its spot over Ben-Hur? Do you think Toy Story will go down, be pulled off the list completely?
No, definitely not that one.
Never pulled off?
Don't think it should be pulled off. If you have any movie that's going to like represent like kids movies on the AFI Top 100, I mean, Toy Story has got to be in contention there. Like, I don't know what else is going to be dethroning Toy Story for its spot for the quintessential American kids movie. It's got cowboys and astronauts.
Oh, yeah. Also, it's not even like the quintessential American children's film. It's also the first of the modern era of children's film. And also, it's the first computer-generated feature. which is another huge place in history.
Of milestones. It hits
Yeah.
a lot of things that makes it culturally important.
Which is kind of the thing where the AFI is looking for. They want films that are considered culturally significant. They want films that have accolades in competitive categories. This that was nominated for 3 Oscars, won a shit ton of Annies, Golden Globes. It was a heavily praised film, and it holds up. This film holds up. And it's also...
Well, they want all of those things and a good film to go with
and
them.
and a good film. And this is a great film.
This hits it, yeah.
So, and you said that Ben-Hur should go way up the list. If
I'm personally thinking Ben-Hur should probably go way up the list, but Toy Story definitely shouldn't. Like, it, you know, if we're only talking about the 2 movies, I think they should swap positions.
Really?
But, you know, in the grander scheme of things, you know, I'm gonna have to see these other movies. Be like, are they really head and shoulders above Toy Story and Ben-Hur here?
And which is going to be interesting to look at, because we're going to watch a lot more films coming up. Next one being Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Oh, well, Yankee Doodle Dandy, you better impress.
James Cagney does nothing less than impress, all right? But,
oh, goodness.
I know. But it's gonna be an interesting one, because that's going to be our first musical on here, which is another thing Toy Story, being a children's animated film,
we didn't
doesn't
talk about
have.
the music.
You know what? We're not even done yet. Let's talk about Mr. Randy Newman, the greatest showman.
I thought it was really nice. Like, honestly, I thought going into it I was going to hate the music because I really dislike Randy Newman's voice.
Oh, you got a friend in me.
But
he sounds like Matt Damon me.
Matt Damon, he does.
Yeah.
But like how earnestly his voice comes off, like it was really nice in this kid's movie.
And the song "You Got a Friend in Me," granted, has a very strong emotional connection in the family.
Yes.
But it's also just a really well-performed song. It's a really sweet song. There's the subtext to it is just so nice. It's a reason that's a really great song to hum along in the car when you have kids.
Yeah. And also what really impressed me was, you know, because I knew I liked You Have a Friend in Me, you know. But
you have a soul, we know.
But when Buzz goes to fly out the window and he can't, and is playing that song, it's something sailing.
Oh yeah, no, can't go sailing. No
yeah,
more.
And I was like, well, this is really a poignant part in the movie where Buzz kind of realizes everything's his life's a sham, but with this Randy Newman song over the top of it, and it actually fits. This really emotional scene, and it the music actually fits with it, the lyrics of the song and everything. It kind of all ties together, and Randy Newman's kind of weird voice is weirdly really good for the songs in this movie. It just, everything fits just right, even though it seems all it should fall apart. Music.
I mean, thinking about it, kind of. This is one of those rare cases where a film, if it does one thing 10 degrees one way or 10 degrees the other, it'll fall apart completely. But this film just walks that line perfectly.
It does.
Randy Newman, that music, I think you could not make this music, or you could not make this film without this music. No. That music is just too perfectly molded and formed to the film. And that moment specifically where Buzz is going to fly out and it plays the song, Buzz doesn't say anything. It's basically a silent scene. Without
the music, yeah.
Yeah, without the music. And the music adds to the visuals we're seeing and enhances it. And that's the best part about music.
It kind of just, the song just kind of describes what Buzz is feeling. Mm-hmm. You know, where he's feeling oh no, everything's when he's initially feeling oh god, I'm a toy. And then he's no, I'm not a toy. I'm a space ranger. And he climbs up, and the music climbs up with him. And it kind of reassures himself, and then he has that final fall, and then the music kind of comes back down with him. It perfectly emulates what's happening in the scene.
And I think that's the thing. Andrei Tarkovsky, very famous and very good Russian filmmaker, he made Stalker.
Yes.
He said the only time you should put music into a scene is when the visuals can't tell the story on their own. And the music here complements that perfectly. All the music in here, it's okay, this is for, a younger audience, whatever, but the music is just going to enhance that moment and help deliver the message, the meaning of this scene, the meaning of this film, and it's perfect. Even the song "You Got a Friend in Me," that's that's about the toys and the people and people who attach themselves to the toy. You know, you got a friend in me, rough, hard, whatever. You always got a friend in me, which I always got a friend in the toys. And then, you know, it blossoms from that. It's a beautiful score.
Actually, yeah.
It's a reason it got nominated for an Oscar. And I'm so mad Pocahontas beat it out.
Pocahontas.
Really?
Pocahontas.
That movie gets canceled in like 20 years after release.
Oh, goodness.
I know. But yeah, the music in this holds up phenomenally. But yeah. So, Randy, next week, Yankee Doodle Dandy, the first musical we're going to be watching on the podcast. Any thoughts, expectations, hopes, dreams about the film?
I'm not gonna lie, I have very low expectations and or hopes for Yankee Doodle Dandy.
For a 1942 musical.
Hopefully my socks are blown off by it.
Yankee Doodle Dandy, you got some big footsteps to follow behind Ben-Hur and Toy Story.
For Ben-Hur, I was already going into it thinking like I'm gonna love this movie. Toy Story, I've already seen it. You know, I was thinking like, oh, you know, even if I don't think it holds up, like it still has a place for me. This is a movie that I have no idea what to expect coming into it. Ben-Hur, I was like, this is like an old Bible epic. I've already seen one of those. You know, Toy Story, I'd already seen it before when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Yankee Doodle Dandy, no idea. Completely blind.
This is going to be the first Randy's blind picks coming in. But yeah, I'm excited. Let's hope it pays off. And if you want to find out about that, next week you can follow us on the YouTube channel In the Frame, and you can also find this podcast, The Film Odyssey, anywhere where podcasts can be found. Apple Podcast, Anchor FM, Spotify, you name it, we play on it. But yeah, Randy, anything you want to sign off with? You got a friend in me?
You got a friend in me.
You do. All right, see y'all next week.